The following KQED production was produced in high definition.
Appreciation for food, wine, and restaurants has changed a lot in the last 30 years. And on this show, I'm talking to someone who has witnessed and participated in them all. So stay tuned for a very special guest on a special Check Please Bay Area.
The beef torta was out of this world.
I actually don't discriminate against pizza.
This is a temple to red meat.
Or like a meatball. We couldn't see it and we couldn't hear it.
Whoa, I'm actually in San Francisco.
This is amazing. Oh, bring me more.
Hi, I'm Leslie Sabraco. Welcome to Check Please Bay Area, the show where regular Bay Area residents review and talk about their favorite restaurants. This time we have a distinctive guest who has worked in, written about, and dined at many of the eateries in the Bay Area and all around the Mediterranean. She began her cooking career in the most famous California kitchen of them all, Chez Panisse. That was before she opened and ran her own place for 12 years, Square One. I'm so happy to be here with Joyce Goldstein. Joyce, how are you?
I'm great. Thank
Good.
you.
Well, I thought we'd begin the show with little bubbles. There's no better way to start the day,
I
right?
agree with that completely. Bubbles are definitely the way to begin.
This is a beautiful J. Schramm 2000 from Schramsburg up in
Delicious.
Napa Valley.
Delicious.
A lovely way. Now, I have to ask, you were studying art. You weren't in, food was kind of an accident for you, right? You were studying art at Yale?
I was studying painting and I was teaching myself to cook. And I invited everybody in the art school and the architecture school to come and eat. They were my guinea pigs. And we had students, say, from Greece, so I would cook a Greek meal to see how I was doing. I fed a lot of the faculty and classmates, and it was a wonderful way to invite people into my space and also to give them pleasure. So I love doing it.
You love doing it, but really cooking is a form of art, isn't it?
It's a form of art, and it's also a form of communication. I mean, you really tell people, I care about you, you're here.
That's right.
And it's also a communication with yourself, because when you're cooking, it's like a moving meditation. I mean, you really think about other things, you're working, you're in touch with the food, and before you know it, you're relaxed, happy, and cheerful.
And you know, you've authored 26 cookbooks, is it now?
Appalling, yes.
Oh, and we'll talk about some of those later on, but I've written 2 books, and I have to tell you, the thought of 26 is just staggering, so I admire you.
I've had a longer time frame.
I bow to you. But you had, when you mentioned that conversation, sort of, you did write a beautiful book, Kitchen Conversations, that it is about that running dialogue in your head, isn't it?
And it's also, I mean, that book came about because one of my customers was sitting at the Square One bar, and he said to me, Joyce, I eat here all the time, so when I cook your recipes, I know that I got there. But what if I have someone else's book? How do I know that I got there? And I thought that was such a profound question. So I started thinking about how I trained the cooks in our restaurant. And so those conversations after the recipes are conversations I would have with cooks in the kitchen, the flavor profile that we were working with, how to bring up, say, the acid or push something back, what we wanted to accentuate in a dish. And those conversations really made this a good teaching book for people who really were involved in flavor, not just making a dish.
Right. And Square One was your own restaurant, and really it opened in '84. And when you said Mediterranean cuisine in the early '80s, I mean, come on, that was very revolutionary, wasn't it?
People would call to make a reservation. They'd say, what kind of food do you serve? And we'd say, Mediterranean. There'd be dead silence. You'd have to say, you know, Spain, Italy, Greece, France. Oh, okay, we know what that is. But we had the most wonderful customers. I had a great staff too. And we sort of all came along together. They were willing to try new foods. I mean, in '84, we were serving Bastilla and couscous and romesco and charmula and all of these things. Nobody knew what the hell they were.
Those names are familiar now.
Now everybody
Right,
knows what they are, and you have to think '84 to 2008, it's taken a while for them to become familiar. But my customers were so superb that they tasted everything. They gave us incredible feedback on the food, requests of things that they'd like to have come back. And slowly but surely, the reason I wrote the first book, Mediterranean Kitchen, those were the top sellers at Square One. Those were the foods that people asked for the most.
And I'm so glad that you brought up Bastia, because we're actually going to take a little break and go to visit the first restaurant featured today. With its large dining room Mediterranean menu and
Yay.
rooftop bar, it serves up flavor-packed small plates. It's in the Elements Hotel on Mission Street between 21st and 22nd, and it's called Medjool.
The Medjool date is the sweetest date. Originally, the Medjool date is out of Morocco, except years ago, a lot of the Medjool date trees were all catching a disease. They found 10 or 11 pairs that they did not have any diseases on them. A couple of them went to Jordan, and the balance went to an area by Santa Barbara. And now that area is the biggest Medjool farm in the world. Well, I kind of listened to the story and I said, wow, if the Medjool date can survive this, maybe it will survive. I love it. You work nonstop. Sometimes you feel the pain, but all it takes is one customer to walk up to you on their way out and say, that was so lovely. We had a great meal, great time. And just words like that, you forget all about the Advil that you've been taking all day.
All right, Joyce, you ready to tuck into some Bastia here?
I am.
Okay, I'm gonna actually, you know what, just use my hands if you don't mind.
I eat with my fingers all the
There we
time.
go.
I think most chefs love eating with fingers.
And this is a terrific vegetable Bastia that we
Yes,
have
I
from
see
Medjool.
root vegetables in here. I see squash.
And we have some octopus salad. Would you like to have a little octopus salad?
I'm
too?
going to do one at a time. Is that okay? Because
Absolutely.
I'm one of those people, I like to taste each thing and understand it before I pile something else on my plate. So I'm going to take a big bite.
Please do. And you know what? While you do that, I'm going to pull out some
that's
wine.
good, too.
I'm not giving up our bubbles.
No, don't
But
give
I'm
up
actually
bubbles.
going to pour you an Oregon Pinot Gris, which is just
Which
beautiful.
would be very nice with this sweetness of the squash and
absolutely.
the little cinnamon here.
Just lovely. And I'll let you talk about pairing food and wine, because your son, Evan Goldstein, is a friend of mine, and I know a collaborator of yours. He's a master sommelier, and has written a terrific book called Perfect Pairings about
Got
food
to
and wine
work on
matching.
that, yeah.
What is your philosophy about pairing food and wine?
Well, see, I don't believe that anything goes. I'm of the older generation. I don't believe that you have to have white wine with fish and red wine with meat. I'm an adventurous taster, but I always think about the item on the plate that I'm pairing with. And I have no formal wine education. I've always had a cellar. Ever since I moved to San Francisco, I had a wine cellar. And Evan has been tasting wine at home since he's 12, because wine appears at the table. His comes from really practiced tasting. Mine is sort of following my gut, my intuition. And I have a good palate for food, so I'm behind him on wine. I got to give him that one. But by tasting together, I've learned a great deal. And in this case, I'm tasting the crunchy, the cinnamon, and the sweet squash. The Riesling is a lovely balance for it. But that doesn't mean I couldn't have some of this bubbly because of the lovely crunch, which would work very well.
Help
and
to offset that a little
lighten
bit.
it up a little bit too, make it bright.
And you talk about that in your books. You talk about the textural component of things and the elements really of the food and the elements of the wine.
And what you want to play up too.
That's right. Now, when you were starting Square One, again in the early 80s,
In the
mid
Stone
80s.
Age, the Stone Age.
I remember actually moving to California, late 80s, and going in there for the first time and thinking, oh my God, this is revolutionary. This is terrific. What gave you the inspiration to start a restaurant like that?
Well, having been the chef at the cafe at Chez Panisse and being a Mediterranean person, I was feeling a little hemmed in. Alice wanted Provence and a teeny corner of Italy, and I wanted Greece, and I wanted Turkey, and I wanted Morocco. I wanted the Mediterranean. I wanted to go to Spain. And so after about a year and a half of feeling, don't fence me in, I said, I guess I'm going to have my own restaurant because I want to cook more. And I gave a year and a half notice. Very responsible adult.
That's right.
And I started looking for a location, but I knew that I wanted to take people around the Mediterranean because the food was so rich and varied that you could never run out of recipes. You could never run out of ideas. It was such sexy food. And also comforting food, too, a wonderful mix. And when I told Evan I was going to do this, he had been working for me in the kitchen. He said, "Mom, I don't want to be in the kitchen anymore. I want to do the wine." Now, I knew that he was good at wine, but I didn't realize he was truly gifted.
Because at that time, he was the youngest master sommelier ever to pass the
But when we
exam.
opened the restaurant, he was 23. He didn't pass till he was 26. So for 3
Ancient,
years,
ancient.
he was an ancient. He worked that floor and he bought
right.
those wines and he went to wineries and he talked them into putting their wine on our list because some of the wines on our list had never been on a restaurant wine list. And then he'd work the floor and we started having wine and food pairing classes in '85.
I mean, again, like, you know, people look at that now and say, so, a wine and food pairing class, but think back.
85. It was revolutionary, and we had again wonderful people who came every week. Evan would tell me what we were drinking, and I'd run a series of food ideas by him, and he'd say, "Yeah, that's the one, Mom," and then we'd make it, and people would go in there and taste, and they loved it. It was something that I knew was sort of unique, but not unusual to us at home. You see, this is what we did. So
Well, and you also started really before Chez Panisse, that you started a home-based business that was education, a cooking school.
I was teaching cooking and providing wine for students and having them taste everything. I was running a small restaurant. I was teaching 25 people in the morning and 25 people in the evening, doing all the prep, all of the shopping, putting out the recipes, cooking the class, talking to the students about the food. And so when I got a call to come and fill in at Chez Panisse for Steve Sullivan, who was going on vacation, first I said, "I've never worked in a restaurant before."
And I'm sure you wanted to, right?
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if that was my thing. Right. But then when I got there, I realized that's what I've been doing. I was sort of born doing this. This is what I love. And so it sort of cemented my belief that that's what I should do for my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you have seen the food scene in the in the Bay Area, the food and dining scene, change immensely, haven't you?
San Francisco was always a maverick. You think how many wonderful women chefs we had here and how many mom and pop restaurants have thrived and are still thriving here because of our incredibly liberal, God bless it, environment that we have
And how
here.
many ethnic restaurants, quote unquote, from Spanish cuisine to Korean to,
Everything.
Burmese to whatever you want, that you can find it
You
here.
can dine around the world, and I think that's also uniquely American. I mean, the fact that one night you can eat Thai food and the next night you can be eating Piemontese cuisine, and then the next night you can be in France, and then for all you know it, you're going to have a Korean dish. Americans have the most diverse palate, and this has been a blessing and also a curse.
Well, before we get to the curse part, I'm going to actually take us on a little trip to Spain.
All right.
And our second restaurant specializes in the flavors of Spain, particularly dishes from the Catalan region in and around Barcelona. Now you can sit inside or out at this downtown location in a thriving alleyway called Belden Place. The restaurant is B44 Catalan Bistro.
The idea behind B44 when I opened, I tried to create a place where I could go and eat, which means that I'm a working class person. I could go and afford the food there and afford the wine there. Most of the recipes at B44 are originally from my friends' mothers and grandmothers. When I had the idea to open a Catalan restaurant in San Francisco, way before we found this space, I went back to Spain for a year and I did a research. I ate in my friends' houses for a day or two. They had their mother hunt for rabbit, hunt for mushrooms, hunt for snails, and then cook it for me in order for me to get the authenticity of the dishes and portray it here in San Francisco. We have about 170 wines in the wine list, although we started with 37, but I got so enthusiastic about all the new wines coming from Spain that right now I spend more time working on the wine list than I do cooking, actually. And definitely B44, it's my baby. I never dreamt of having a restaurant downtown here, and I'm very proud I was able to bring the culture through the food to the Bay Area, from Barcelona to San Francisco.
All right, Joyce, we have from B44 two classic Catalan dishes. Actually, I feel like I should have a cava in my glass, and
We
I
should.
Spanish sparkling. But this is a paella. From
Looks
Daniel.
really nice.
Terrific
Looks
chef
really
there.
good.
I've served myself some. I'm going to hand it off to
he's
you.
A wonderful
and a
cook.
fideuà, which
Yes.
is a traditional
The
dish as well.
noodles, the noodles. Let me put this one down.
It looks a bit like the rice-a-roni you,
Well,
you
it
know, make for your
does.
kids.
They're those wonderful little noodles. The noodles themselves are called fideos, and you can buy them at the Spanish table, and they cook up really easily. They brown them first, and then they add the stock, like making a risotto. It's sort of an interesting technique.
That's right.
And it's a delicious dish. Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
the vino.
And of course, no meal would be complete without some wine. And this is what grows together goes together, I guess. This is a wine from the Toro region of Spain, Tempranillo, although the local name is Tinta de Toro. And quite an elegant, spicy,
is very nice.
Lovely red. I'm looking forward to it
Well,
with
let's
this
see how it goes here.
dishes. Now, you mentioned
Yes.
that it was a bit of a curse in some ways that our palates are given such a choice, really.
Well, what it does is it breaks down borders and it gives chefs license to kill. They can combine 12 different cuisines on a plate, flavors that were never meant to be intimate with each other. And
Bad bedfellows, huh?
Bad bedfellows, and it confuses the customers incredibly because all of a sudden dishes that should have respect. It would be as if Daniel made his paella and then put Chinese seasoning on it and some Greek yogurt and whatever else. Young chefs, they want to learn, but they don't have any sense of history and geography and a sense of the past. All of these foods have a tradition. And once you understand them, you treat them with a little bit more respect.
And
You
that's
don't-
really something you focus on in your cookbooks is bringing that tradition, bringing that history to the forefront when you're talking about the cuisine.
It's important what grew there. I mean, we're in the era of airplanes and refrigeration, but you know, before in the Mediterranean, people cooked what was right outside their door.
That's right.
Things were very fresh. Things weren't put in cold storage for 2 months. Spices were freshly ground. Everything was much more intense in flavor. And because of what grew in that region, the recipes developed using those ingredients. So when we think that we have this international supermarket, it's a blessing in a wonderful way. You want to learn to cook Chinese food, you can take a class. You can buy all the ingredients. You want to cook Greek food, you can do it. But unfortunately what happens is anything goes.
Well, and that's a trend. I mean, let me get your opinion on these, whether it's fusion cuisine, whether it's foam, whether it's, you know, stacked foods, small plates. Where do you think these trends have led us? To a good place? To sometimes a bad place?
Sometimes a good place. People of talent can always lead you to a good place. People with a good palate, they can take it and make it right. But a lot of people just look at the glitter and not what's underneath. You can't put foam on everything.
Right.
And it works for some people, but most of the time it's sort of hilarious. It looks like someone spit on your plate.
Well, and I went to El Bulli in, you know, sort of the Fran Adria, the
Yes, yes.
originator of foam, and
Yeah.
you know, you can pull it off if that's your creation.
Well,
but
also,
other than that,
that's an experiential meal. It's not like I'm going out for dinner and I want to eat a great meal. You're going to have an educational experience.
so do you think these trends in the Bay Area have run their course? Do you see something new that's exciting?
I think what it
Return
is,
to roots, maybe?
one would hope, but I'm not holding my breath because young chefs also want press attention. And the way people get attention is to be unique or doing something different. I mean, one new trend that I like that's very classic are chefs making salumi.
Right.
And that's a very old technique, and yet because it's new to people, having house-made head cheese or salamis or little
Or
sausages.
offal, you know, celebrating
Yes,
the whole
yes.
animal.
All
That's
of this.
old, that's new again.
That's
Right.
old and it's new again, and I think that's great. I think anything that respects a tradition and presents it to you in a new way because, hey, you didn't know about that. You didn't know that we could make those things.
Right.
We only flew them in, or we could only get them in Europe. So that's a lovely trend. I think the artisan movement, the wonderful cheeses in America, all of the things that we're cultivating here, going to the farmer's market and tasting the difference between different peaches and when the strawberries are good and when they're too soon. This is an incredible education, and we are so blessed to be here.
We are so blessed to be in this
Our
part of the world, aren't we?
marketplace is incredible. I know chefs in New York who would kill to have our produce. I mean,
That's right.
it's extraordinary.
And what about this idea of multi-course meals? Now, granted, I'm putting a few things out for you to taste here, but this is not a 12-course, multi-course meal. What do you think about that?
I can't do them anymore. I find them too much work. I find that after the 6th or 7th bite, my palate is exhausted.
It is about the enjoyment, the experience.
The whole process has to be enjoyable, so you don't want to feel, oh God, yet another course. I'm dying now. It's just like having too many wines. I mean,
right.
I love to enjoy my wine. I have wine every night. I cook for myself every night. I always have 1 or 2 glasses of wine and enjoy them, and I think about what I'm having. All of it should be a pleasurable experience. It should never be an endurance test, and it should never be an adventure just for the sake of shocking people. I don't want to be shocked. I'm too old to be shocked. The hell with that. I would like to eat really good food, prepared with love, with the chef maybe in the kitchen. Oh my God, what a concept. Being there and checking out in the dining room and seeing people's response to the food, having tasted it, having trained the staff to have some feeling for it, and also some understanding of the cuisine.
Well, I'm going to let you actually dig into your food and taste it with the Toro and even the sparkling wine while I introduce our last restaurant, which will actually take us to Italy. And it's a tiny gem of a restaurant where regional northern Italian cuisine is dotted with just a hint of Hungarian flavor. You'll find some wonderful Venetian specialties on Columbus at a place called Flora.
I wanted to open up a small family restaurant with a very particular ambiance that would make people really feel at home and with a respect for the place, like Mama's cooking. I worked the kitchen alone, and there were times that I had no staff for the front of the room, so I would actually take orders, go back in the kitchen, and if I knew the client or the client was sympathetic enough, I would say, if the phone rings, do you mind picking it up? Or give a person a table if they look nice, at any rate. So I needed somebody, and that person came in the form of Jen over here. Jen has a very refined touch.
Yeah, it's
She's
very
delicate.
A lot of the things I make are very delicate, but yet there's a lot of flavor there. It's very layered, and I like to use things that are in season, and always trying to keep the focus in Italy.
And then we do have a little secret other area we explore.
Yes, Hungary, which we've both been to together. We've traveled in Europe together because Flora's Hungarian. But our hearts are always in Venice.
Okay, I have to say, De Flora is one of my favorites. I often get asked what are my favorite restaurants, and De Flora certainly is high up there. And this is their pistachio cake.
And I always order it.
You always order it. And Flora actually sent a wine over for us to taste, a lovely Marsala, a fortified wine from the island of Sicily, and a bit nutty and caramely. And then we also have a French wine, a Jurançon.
Let's see how that one goes.
Let's try them both, right?
Let's try them both.
And we've got this lineup here. We can even do a little bubbles because we know bubbles goes with everything, doesn't it?
Almost everything in the world. Those are both very nice. My heart is with the Sicilian wine. I think it picks up on the nuts. And this yummy cake.
I could just sit here and eat this.
Well, we may do that.
Now, did you ever think when you started this career, accidentally, that you would be in a position 30 some odd years later to be giving people advice? What would you say to people wanting to get into the restaurant business, to those of them that are in the restaurant business? What do they need to pay attention to?
Well, I think if you're planning to go into the restaurant business, number one, you have to love customers. You do, because they pay your bills. You also have to love your staff. If you don't take care of your staff, they will not take care of your guests. It's not about ego. And it's not about fancy decor and spending all that money on square plates that don't hold your knife and fork but look dramatic on the table. I think as a chef, you need to educate yourself. You need to do your homework. You need to know the reasons behind your food. You need to taste it often. You need to eat in your own dining room, unannounced.
That's right, you'd be surprised.
You'd be shocked at some of the things coming out on the table.
That people don't know, having eaten at their own restaurant.
They don't do it, and they need to do it.
And what about for customers, for food lovers? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think once customers find a restaurant that they love, they should eat there as often as possible. They then become part of the staff family. They can influence the palate a
Loyalty.
little bit. Loyalty counts for a lot.
And I think that's what we find on Check Please Bay Area is that we have loyal guests on the show. These are people that love their restaurant and patronize their restaurants. And it does make a difference in the dining scene, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I want to thank my expert guest on this week's show, Joyce Goldstein. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure
sharing
to be
all your
here.
insight. Don't forget that this show will be available on the website along with all our regular shows. The website address is www.kqed.org/checkplease, and it offers the opportunity to read about all the restaurants. You can even add your comments, check out the blog, or download the podcast. It also has information on the KQED Wine Club wines we've been tasting and enjoying today. So join us next time for our regular show when 3 new guests will recommend their favorite spots right here on Check Please Bay Area. I'm Leslie Sabraco, along with the fabulous Joyce Goldstein, and we will see you next time. Cheers, Joyce. We're going to go to the bubbles.
Cheers.
Back to bubbles.
Back to bubbles.
This show is available in high definition, Comcast On Demand, and via podcast. For additional information on the restaurants featured, to comment, or to apply to be on the show, go to our website at kqed.org/checkplease. A KQED television production.